Blaxit community. We're here every Saturday afternoon from 12 noon to 1 p.m. We're going to welcome Itoro, and I've been speaking with her only via WhatsApp, and she has some very exciting information that I think you'll be very interested in hearing. She's in Nigeria right now, and I thought it would be very interesting to have her on the show and learn a little bit about her life in Africa. So welcome, Itoro, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited to get your story here. It's a very exciting story. And I thought maybe we would start out with a little bit of an introduction. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your life in the States, your occupation, and all that good stuff. A little bit about yourself to introduce to the audience.
Sure. I was born and raised in the US. I was born in Houston, Texas, and raised in New England in Massachusetts, a very small town. And like I like to say, we were the only Africans on the block. So at a very young age, I was very aware of my otherness and just the differences. And, you know, there was complexity in that, chaos in that, and also a lot of beauty in that as well. So I spent my formative years in New England, and to get a chance at a different kind of life right after grad school, I moved out to California. So I lived out there for about 8 years in the Bay Area. And out there, I was doing a lot of work in Black-led organizing, the nonprofit sector, and specifically working in youth programming around creating different programs for those who would be considered at-risk youth to participate in and feel a little more free in. And through all of that, I was also working as a writer and publishing and talking a lot about the things that I'm passionate about, which is identity and what it means to live in between. And then I think it was right after Trump got elected, I started to really question whether or not living in the United States was a sustainable option for me. I was very exhausted, is just the best descriptor I have for it. I felt like I was running a wheel that I needed to get off. So I ended up losing my job because the place I was working at, it was a nonprofit, which means that it lost its funding after a while. So that means my job was no more. But it gave me an opportunity to figure out something different. You know, how do I want to live out the rest of my life? What are the principles I hold dear, the values? And it's always been writing. So I applied to an amazing writing fellowship in Kenya. And a few months later, I was in Nairobi, and I had such a great time. I remember feeling such a sense of peace that I couldn't quite explain. And I have to say, I ended up not doing the writing fellowship because I ended up actually being called out to Abuja, Nigeria, which is where I currently reside, to talk about my writing as a Nigerian-American at the American International School, because one of the teachers found a short story I had written and was just like, I think the students would love to hear from you, because many of our students are planning to go to the United States to study, to go to college, to live. So how about we fly you out here? And I was just like, this sounds so much cooler than the writing fellowship in Kenya. And it also gave me an opportunity to go back to my parents' homeland, which I hadn't visited since I was 2. So I did that, then went back to Kenya and decided to skip my ticket to the US. And just ever since, it's been a ride. It's been a ride.
Wow, that's really interesting. And so how long have you been in Nigeria?
Now I'm a little over 2 years in Nigeria.
And now, did you say you had gone there in the past? You had been to Nigeria in the past many times?
Yes. No, not many times. I had been, before I came back here to resettle, I had been once when I was 2 years old, which of course I don't remember. And then I had been another time in 2018 through the American International School to talk about my work, my writing. And then I had come back a year later and finally resettled.
Okay, great. Now, also, when you were, I heard you say something about the political situation and everything that was going on in the US. And I know that is one thing that drives people away. That's one of the reasons why we left as well. although we were planning to go before Trump got into office. But once you made that decision to think about leaving the U.S., was Nigeria or was Africa the only place that you had thought about going, or had you maybe considered other countries?
It was Africa. I had been to Tanzania a few years before, and I remember just falling in love. And then I was just like, I just have to come out here. And I was only there for 4 days. So I always knew I would come back to the continent. I just wasn't quite sure about the country.
Okay, so now what was the process that you went through to actually make your exit? Because even if you have something that you've got lined up in another country, it still takes a little bit of planning to actually make your exit from the US to go to another country. So can you give us a little bit of an idea when you decided that you were going to go, what your thought process was and how you actually managed to get yourself out of the country? And actually, how long did it take you from the time you made the decision until the time that you left?
Yeah, sure. When I actually made the decision that I was going to Kenya for the writing fellowship, it didn't take very long because I had my lodging. I had a little community of people that I knew out there as well. So I had my the folks I would be with. So there was that piece, and I raised some money to go over there as well. And that's something I always tell people: if you want to go, just have a good nest egg. So I had a little savings, and then I raised a little more and went. But I also want to say that I always had thought I was coming back. I thought I would only be out on the continent for about 3 months.
Oh.
So I also say that my story is very, I would say, intuitively led, and I wouldn't advise everyone to do it at all. I think it's better to have a plan, but I think for me, that's just not the way it worked out.
Right.
So when I was in Kenya, like I had said before, it was time to leave to go back to the US, but I was really contemplating, where am I the happiest? So I decided to skip my ticket and stay. And then after that, when I made that decision, I started to pick up freelance writing work. So, because thankfully, if you have your laptop, you can work from anywhere. So that's what I did. And then I stayed out in Airbnbs for a good while, couch surfed as well, and then stayed with a friend until I figured myself out. So when things started to become a bit more stable, I'll say, when I went to Nigeria, is I had a colleague I had met at a festival, a literary festival, who knew about my work writing and said, there's this media startup who could use some of your expertise in storytelling. And they're in Nigeria. So, they could fly you out, give you lodging, and you could be working with Nigerians around storytelling. And he was just like, and you could do some good for your country. So that is how I was able to stabilize through that job and find my footing.
How did you like Kenya?
I loved Kenya so much. Yeah, Nairobi. I just thought Nairobi was so interesting and has a different energy, a different vibe than West Africa, specifically Nigeria. And also what I love about Kenya is that there are so many different microclimates. If you want the beach, you can go to the coast. If you want the mountains, you can go from Nairobi up north. If you want the city, you can go to Nairobi. If you want safari, everything is there. And also there was just so many different cultures to mix with, to learn about, a rich history as well. So I fell in love with Kenya. I mean, that's what made me not leave and go back to the States.
So what's the expat community like in Kenya? Is there a large expat community, and specifically or primarily, is there a African American expat community there?
I did not meet many African Americans out there. I think I met one, and when we met, we just kind of latched on to each other out of that shared kinship. I met more Black folk from abroad coming from the UK, actually. That was more of my experience. So I didn't, whenever I would interact with expat communities, I would always be aware that I was most likely the only one with an American background. So that was very interesting.
Okay. Also, when you went to Kenya, what was the process like for leaving the United States as far as visa situations go? Tell us a little bit about, is it easy to just pick up and go to Kenya?
I would,
Visa-wise?
it's definitely a more seamless process than coming to Nigeria. Nigeria has a lot more paperwork and just hoops you have to jump through. But with Kenya, I got there, I filled out my application, I paid my fee, and then I was able to stay there for 3 months and extend my visa to another 3 months. So the total I could stay there was 6 months. And when that was done, I had to go to Ethiopia and wait it out for about 1 month and then come back to Kenya. And then I stayed for another 6 months. So it's much easier to travel within Kenya because it's also a huge tourist nation.
Mm-hmm.
So they depend on tourism. So it's a more seamless process, I'd say.
Okay, so you get like 90 days, I'm assuming.
You get
When you come in
90
under
days.
90 on your US passport, but then you're allowed
Yes.
to extend it for another 90 days, but you don't have to leave the country.
No, you
And then
don't.
so after you do that twice, then you have to
Hmm.
leave the country and you have to stay out for a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
I stayed out for a month, came back, and then I did the process all over again.
Well, yeah, right. So now you're getting ready to go to Nigeria. So when you go from Kenya to Nigeria, how seamless is that?
That was not seamless at all, which was a huge surprise to me. It's easier if you have your Nigerian passport, which I didn't have. Initially, I only had my US. I have it now, which I'm so thankful for. Um, so there was just a lot of red tape I had to get through. There had to be a statement of your sufficient funds, which was fine to provide, but the difficulty too was at times it was hard to make payments on the system they give you to fill everything out. So that was um, difficult to navigate. So what helped me navigate that was the fact that I was coming through an organization, which is always better. It's always better if there's someone on the ground who's hosting you, an organization who you can work through. So I was very thankful for that because they were able to go to the agents there and say, hey, what's going on? How can we do this? How can we do that? Can we get this through? You know, what is needed? Otherwise, I don't think I would have been able to get in. And this is twice. With the American International School, it was still very difficult for me to get in up until the very end.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, since we're on that, I was going to ask you this a little bit later, but since we're talking about visas and the ability to stay in a country, so now you're there. What's the situation like to continue to stay there?
Oh, it's fine. I'm a citizen.
Oh, you're a citizen. So do you
I
have,
am.
okay, so do you have dual passports or what? Or did you just
Yes,
apply for citizenship?
I applied. I mean, the thing is, because my parents are citizens,
Right.
I'm a citizen.
Right.
You know, I just have to go get my passport, get the right paperwork. So I got my certificate of origin, which was such a huge accomplishment for me. I think that's one of the greatest things I've ever done, is to have a piece of paper that says I'm from here.
Right.
Yeah. So I had to do all of that. I will say that the process with paperwork in Nigeria does take longer. Like, it took me 6 months to finally get my passport, but when I got it, I was so proud. Oh, and then of course you have to get your identification number. So I got that as soon as I came into the country, about a week into my stay.
Well, now, how easy do you think it would be, though, for someone who isn't a citizen to go to Nigeria? I say that partly because I know a lot of people are thinking of, in this relocation, they're thinking of going back to the continent. I know they're considering Tanzania, Ghana. I've heard of people going to Cameroon, Sierra Leone. People go to Kenya, but I don't think I've ever met anyone that was going to Nigeria. Is it hard to get in there? Do you see a lot of, on the same question that I asked you about Kenya, do you see a lot of expats actually going there, either from the UK, other places, or the United States?
I see a lot of returnees.
Returnees, okay.
I see a lot of people returning, who already have um, parents here and stuff, families here. It's hard if you're an expat trying to live here there and trying to stay here. And that's what I've heard down the map from everyone I've spoken to. There's just a lot of hoops you have to jump through to prove citizenship, prove that you have a right to stay here, especially if you're working here as well. It's not to say that it's impossible. I mean, we have a huge communities out here, from the Lebanese, the Chinese, like everyone has figured it out, but it takes time.
Right.
Some people say it's like having to pay your dues. So, and then in terms of the expat international development world, Nigeria, from what one person told me, he said whenever somebody is posted in Nigeria, they usually decline to come to Nigeria. So that's the other thing as well. He said a lot of expats would prefer to go to Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Senegal. Nigeria is usually bottom of the list.
Right.
So I've heard.
Okay, interesting, because I had wondered about that. So now, when you first got to Nigeria, where did you stay originally? Was it where you're staying now, or did you land in maybe like Lagos? Is it Lagos or Lagos?
Lagos, even though some people say Lagos.
I know, because I've always said Lagos, and then I was watching a show on YouTube, and it was in Africa, and they said Lagos, and I was like, oops, I think I'm saying it incorrectly. So it is Lagos. So did you stay there first, or did you try out another city, or where did you go when you first got there?
I stayed in Abuja. Abuja's been my city. It's quieter. People say Lagos is like 20 New York cities rolled into one. And in many ways, they are very much right. So I just wanted to be someplace a little quieter and a little more sane.
Right.
So I went to Abuja.
But Abuja is quite a large city as well, though, right? I don't know what the population is, though. Do you know what the population is there?
No, I can't say offhand. I know in Lagos it's around 23 million people, and Abuja is smaller, much smaller than that. But I wouldn't want to give a wrong number.
Okay, that's okay. So let's see what I was going to ask you. How, as far as Abuja goes, can you give us a little bit of an idea about the cost of living there? You said it's quieter there. Is it less expensive there? How does life compare between living in Lagos, and living in Abuja?
Sure. Abuja is a planned city. So it was constructed in 1976, and it's the governmental capital. And Lagos is considered more of the commercial capital, just to say that colors kind of everything about Abuja in its contrast to Lagos. So because it's a governmental capital, because it's planned in the way it is, it's actually, most people would say, a very expensive city. Unless you're living on the outskirts, like in Kubwa, Lube, Kado, not like the central areas, which is like Maitama, Wuse 2, you're probably paying a pretty kobo, which is like the currency out here, kobo naira. So it's really, really, really high. In fact, we have an issue of a lot of abandoned buildings. So buildings that have been paid for, but nobody lives in, and renters can't afford. So, yeah.
I had heard that part of the planning of that was to offset or kind of downsize the population in Lagos. And that was one of the reasons why and people were moving to Abuja. And I think it's mostly the wealthy people, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's a city for the wealthy, for sure. And I think one of your questions you had asked prior was, where do the expats live? Most likely, if you're an expat, most likely, then you're living in the more central areas, the more wealthy areas of Abuja. So Wuse, Maitama, Jabi. And it's not to say that you can't find affordable housing. I mean, I found it and I love where I live, but it can be tricky.
Well, can you give us an idea, maybe compared to the United States, what are the rates over there for living as far as housing goes? Say if you were going to be a renter and you wanted to come and rent maybe a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment or condo. I'm not sure exactly what they have there. How would you compare the
Yeah.
cost to maybe some of
Uh,
the larger major cities in the US?
sure. It's okay. So I'm gonna have to answer this in like a few layers. So my
Okay, go ahead.
apologies for taking so long.
No, no, no. Go
Um,
ahead. We have plenty of time.
but so it's standard if you are looking to rent in Abuja or anywhere in Nigeria. Most likely you'll have to pay a year to 2 years upfront.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah. So I know a friend who wanted a 3 bedroom in Life Camp. So she paid 2.5 million naira. So that's like a few $1,000 upfront, you know? And then on top of that, you have to think about your furnishings and all of that as well. Um, so you have that, but then you also have, say you have like a studio in an area that's not as secure, and you can get a place for say 500,000 naira. So that's a little bit under, I believe, $1,000 if I'm right, and you could have that for the year, but you might not have electricity running all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean it can go out for like 3 days. You might not have access to running water as frequently as other people who are living and who have paid a higher price. So it really does depend.
Oh
It,
my
it
goodness.
does. And then you have places that are going for like 20 million naira a year, 400 million naira a year. Like the prices are high.
Wow.
Yeah.
Woo. Okay. Well, let me ask you this too, by the way. I know there are probably a lot of different languages spoken in Nigeria and in Lagos, because I know when I was in Senegal, uh, everyone spoke, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 different languages. What's it like in the area where you are? There are a lot of different languages being spoken, but one of my questions is about English. Is English spoken there? Do you have to learn another language to live there? Because I generally encourage people when they're going to move to another country to learn the language. So I'm not really sure how easy it would be there to learn the language if there are a lot of languages.
Yeah. So in Nigeria, there's over 500 languages.
Well, that would be a little
Uh,
bit difficult.
yeah. And, and with around 200 million people in the country. So at any given time, people can be speaking all different types of languages around you. But in where I am, which is considered like the North Central area, like the main language out here is Hausa. But even then, I get checked because I have a lot of people who are from the North saying not everyone speaks Hausa. Hausa is the dominant language, but there are other languages. So here I know Hausa more. I've learned some snippets like thank you is nagode. Um, then there's when you're speaking about English, there's Naija Pidgin. A lot of places have their own creolized language. So Nigerians have that as well. And I would definitely say if you're out here and you really want to integrate into the culture and just learn how to connect to other people, learn Nigerian Pidgin, period. Um, I don't speak it so well. I get very embarrassed because I feel like I just sound so, you can tell that it's
That you're
not.
not from there.
Yeah. But I'm understanding it more and more every day, which is really good.
Well, what's safety like there as far as tourists being safe, and also specifically as a woman and a woman traveling alone or living there alone? What's the
Mm,
safety situation?
yeah, well, the security situation in Nigeria is not great at all. In fact, a lot of people would say it's dwindling. When I came out here, that first job that I got was actually working for a media publication around reporting on security and crisis in Nigeria because we are at a crisis state. Um, there are just a lot of things that contribute to our insecurity, whether it's unemployment, whether it's poor infrastructure with roads specifically as well, and just the lack of options that many people have. It's not the best time. It hasn't been for a while to travel in Nigeria without having, I would say, a specific plan. And then the other thing as well is that Nigeria is not really a tourist nation. I mean, there are places that have tried, like if you go to the south, around the Calabar area, like there was the Calabar Festival, and that would bring out, from what I was told, people from all over the world, because it was such a beautiful festival and stuff. But now with COVID and just the rising insecurity, that's not so as much. But the one place everyone can go to is Lagos. You know, as my mom says, Lagos is for everybody. So if you want to go there and, you know, have fun and see the sights, you can definitely go. But overall, Nigeria isn't, I wouldn't say it's not tourist friendly. And being a woman alone, especially where I am more in the north as well, traveling alone isn't something people would recommend. And this is also when you have to consider your particular embodiment. Mm-hmm. So my particular embodiment as a Black woman who is Nigerian, even though I've been abroad and stuff, if I'm walking around alone, people are going to ask, where's your family? What are you doing? And then there'll be certain assumptions attached to your singlehood. And that's a big thing here. Being of a certain age and being alone. So traveling alone it's not something that a lot of people would recommend to do, but people have done it. So I don't want to say don't do it, just you have to be extra safe. Like right now I'm out here with my family, you know, like after a while traveling alone, I started to see, I was like, I think I need some familial support. So I linked up with my family out here. And I've been grateful for that.
Well, what is the status of treatment of women just in general there?
Not very good. I think we're like rated one of the worst in the world for how we treat our women. And, you know, if you look in any kind of sector, it's one of the things and one of the hopes I have for Nigeria is that we just do better with how we treat each other in general, but specifically how we treat the girl child, how we treat women. So it's not easy, and especially in the northern areas, but everywhere you go, every sector you go, women aren't as valued. And it's definitely clear to see, even in our politics too, having women run for office and stuff. I mean, of course it can be done, but it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sad. What's the, and back to just living there, what is the transportation situation like there? Easy to get around, buses, trains?
I would not bus. I would not train if you're not from here. I wouldn't do it. Not to say that it can't be done. Look, right. There are some people who come out here and are gangster, and they don't care, and they live to tell the tale.
Oh, no.
But I would say if you can take a plane, take a flight, that's great. Again, road safety here is a huge issue. So it's not like Kenya where you can go on these beautiful road trips and see the scenery, you know, and you can more or less expect roads to be paved. Out here, you should just be careful. And also kidnapping is high.
Wow.
So yeah.
How far is Abuja from Lagos?
So Abuja is more in the northeast. So if you're taking a flight, it's about an hour and 15 minutes to get there.
So it isn't anything, you would never like drive there or get a bus or something there?
You could. I wouldn't, but you could. I know somebody who drove. It was about a 6-hour drive for him. But again, he was from here. He just knew how to get by. He knew how to converse in a way that I didn't.
Right. Now, where you're living, since it seems to be a more upscale area, I'm imagining for shopping, for groceries and things of that nature, regular grocery stores there. I know, you know, a lot of times in Africa and the different countries I've seen, like more little roadside stands of fruits and, big market areas or whatever. So do they have that in Abuja, or is it more commercialized, that they actually have more malls and big stores and those kinds of things?
They do. Abuja has everything. So they have the big supermarkets, they have the small supermarkets, the small pharmacies. They also have like the outside markets, which I actually like going to personally, because I think that's where you get all of your fresh produce. If you eat meat or fish, you'll get it fresh there most likely. So they have that too. Yeah, it has everything that a normal city would have.
So I'm assuming too, just assuming, that it's probably much cheaper to buy your produce and whatever from the small markets as opposed to buying it in the grocery store. But if you do buy it in the grocery store, are the prices higher, extremely higher, if you compare like shopping in a grocery store in the United States, or do you think it's less?
It's higher for sure.
Okay.
It's definitely higher.
Okay, wow. That's all very interesting. Okay, what about hair care? I've seen a lot of interesting hairstyles that come from the Nigeria, or I guess in Lagos or whatever. I've seen a lot of women with different hairstyles there. So it looks like it might be pretty easy to find someone to do hair there, which is very difficult in Costa Rica. We have a very difficult time as Black women to find anyone to help us with our hair.
Got it. Yeah, out here, there's a natural hair care movement happening between Abuja, Lagos, other places in Nigeria. So for me, it's been easy to access people and different salons to get different hair products, and to whether it's shea butter, coconut oil, different treatments they have. There's a huge also movement around here I've seen with people using Ayurvedic products for their hair care growth.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, people are doing, yeah, a lot of specifically Nigerian women are doing amazing things around natural hair care, and also, just taking away that whole idea that our hair isn't good the way it is and can't be taken care of.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, I also know that in a lot of countries in Africa, skin bleaching is prevalent. Are they doing that in Nigeria?
It's huge. I just saw something on Instagram that my friend posted saying that Nigeria is like maybe in like the top 5 for skin bleaching, for using skin bleaching products. I mean, I don't really shop at the supermarkets anymore for a few reasons, but one of the big reasons is that when you go down the beauty aisle, everything is just the ingredients has so much skin whitening, skin lightening products. If you don't do a double take, you could even buy a product that you think is fine but has like a skin bleaching agent in it. Even African black soap. There was an African whitening black soap that I saw, and that's what I usually use to bathe with. And I remember just going to the grocery store saying, oh, here's, African black soap. And then I looked at it again and it said African whitening black soap or has whitening agents. And I was just like, wait, I can't use this. So yeah, it's pretty intense out here.
Wow. Well, gee, thank you for all that information. But, I'd like to take a little bit of time here now and talk to you about your project and why you're really there, your love, what you're actually doing over there. And I know you contacted me and sent me an excellent documentary that you had. So I want to take a little bit of time here and just tell us a little bit about, we'll take as much time as you want. Tell us about your projects and exactly what got you over there, your love, and what you're doing over there in Nigeria.
Thank you. I mean, what brought me over here was one, the person who suggested that I take the job with the media startup was just like, your country needs you. He was just like, what are you doing in Kenya? And I was like, I'm just enjoying my life. And he was just like, well, there's something to do in Nigeria, and I'll never forget that, because he was just like, Nigeria right now needs people who love the country and who want to do the work of building a better country. And that's why I'm here. because I don't know, our conversation has been quite intense when I tell you what it's like to really live in Nigeria. You know, it's not anything that I can romanticize. I love it, but I certainly love it by will, you know, because some days it can be quite intense to live here. So I came out here out of, I would say, a civic duty, number one. And then number two, I just wanted to see where my parents came from and get an idea of what was running through my blood. Um, so those were the reasons why. And then out of that, I started to get connected to a group of returnees, and we were all asking the same questions around what does it mean to return back to your parents' homeland, and what does it mean to go beyond just the exercise of I'm here because I want to learn more about my roots, and kind of moving into a space of action and of connecting to what's actually happening on the ground in real time, you know. And then one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this kind of search for looking at our history and trying to do things in a way that makes the world a safer place, at least Nigeria a safer place, was this idea of ancestral trauma, generational trauma, and also our families not talking to us about the state Nigeria is in completely. You know, because it's very different when you're abroad and you're learning about the African continent and specifically West Africa, you know, but it's also very different when you finally get to live here and you see how that plays out in real time. So one of the big questions that came up with me was, why didn't I know this? Why didn't anybody tell me this and stuff? And then I was just like, oh, this is a trauma. This is a wound, to not talk about what you left and why you left it. So that's what the documentary looks at and talks about. And as you know, in the past 2 years, we've had so much happen with COVID. Then right after COVID hit, we had NSARS, you know, and there was just a lot kind of fomenting in Nigeria that we need to look at as a people, as a culture, as a nation. So I wanted to contribute something that could look at that in my small way.
Wow. And aren't you also writing a book?
Oh yeah, well, thankfully the book is written and it's finally out in the world. But Faith, so the documentary is a companion to the novel, which is also, it's a work of fiction that is also looking at ancestry and also what it means to have a cross-cultural identity between Nigeria and the US, and what it means to return.
Right. Wow. Well, you know, we all have that that trauma, you know, just coming from the continent and coming to the United States. You know, we all have that trauma, and I think it's I'm very pleased that you're over there trying to be of service and help and to try to alleviate some of that trauma. I think it's something that we also need here in the United States. I don't think a lot of times I don't think we actually realize, you know, the trauma that we do have and how it's really affecting us. So I'm happy to hear that you're trying to do something about that, trying to help people through that.
Thank you.
Also, I was I don't know if this really comes up since there's not a lot of African Americans over there, I guess, but have you ever had a discussion, or what is your impression of what Nigerians think of African Americans? Because there's this thing about this love-hate thing about, no, they don't like us. Yes, they like us. You know, they think we're rich. They think we're what they see on TV. What's your impression of what they think? Since you're right there,
Sure.
if you
Yeah.
discussed it or whatever.
Well, I'll definitely say that I've met more African Americans out here than I have in Kenya, which I think is delightful. Um, and then what do they think? Well, I've heard many different, I'll give you the top two things I've heard. The number one thing I've heard is that there's a tendency for Nigerians to not understand how racism works in the US,
Mm-hmm.
and to think it's people whining, for lack of a better term, about an experience that actually colors every part of life, every facet. And if they haven't traveled abroad in that way, specifically to the US, not to say that you don't see it in the UK or Canada or anywhere else, but I'll definitely say in the US, there's a way racism is just so thick. So if they haven't been to the US specifically, there's just usually a lot of like, well, what are they complaining about? I've been in some conversations that have been difficult to have, but I think important, where I'd hear Nigerians saying, I understand more where the white people are coming from.
Oh,
That was very interesting.
wow.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's been humbling for me having to be in a lot of spaces like that, because in a way you kind of have to hear it in order to heal it,
Right.
I say. But then I see all of the points of misunderstanding that we have to bridge as a people, if we truly want to be a united front, I think.
Right.
And then there's also another camp that is, especially after Trump got elected. And it's not to say that US was perfect before, not at all. But with Trump, it was almost like the veil had been lifted. So a lot of Nigerians began to like question the US, like everything from foreign policy, especially when Trump came out and said, a lot of these African nations or African originated nations are, sorry, I don't want to swear, but, they're bleep hole countries. They were just really like looking and asking, like, is it that difficult to be Black in America? And then finally, some of us were able to say, yes, it actually is. And they were able to hear it and be like, well, is this a place that I want to travel to, study in, and give the best of myself to? Maybe I'll go somewhere else. So there is a movement of that as well that I want to highlight.
Right. Well, I have heard also other countries on the continent that have the same feeling about African Americans that were whining, and they don't understand the racism because it's a different place. I mean, what they've been subjected to in Nigeria is not the same thing as we've been subjected to here. But I think that we need to try to understand each other. We need to understand the culture and the history and the past of what's gone on with a lot of the countries on the continent. But likewise, it's probably time for them to take a look at what's happened to the people that ended up in the United States, to make us all what we are now. So, we got to kind of come together there. What's the one thing that you think surprised you the most when you got to Nigeria? Maybe that you weren't expecting.
Well, let's see. I guess what surprised me the most was what everyone around me was telling me the most, was that Nigeria is not an easy place to live. It's not that I thought it wasn't easy. Maybe so. Maybe that was a bit of my own arrogance there, but I just didn't think, I didn't think it was exactly as people said it was. But then I came here and I saw it's exactly as people said it was. So that both surprised me and it also humbled me in the same breath.
Right. Well, any words of any parting words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience before we wrap up today?
Sure. I think one of my biggest lessons I've learned, especially being from the West, being Black American, Nigerian-American, I romanticized the continent in many ways. I think I looked at it as an escape or as a Wakanda, and I had that even up until I left Kenya, because in many ways, Kenya is very, it's a place where you can go and live a fantasy and forget that there are other people in Kenya who aren't living that fantasy. But when I went to Nigeria, in a way, it became the great equalizer, because you're in a place where everywhere you go, you cannot ignore that there's a lot of work to be done. and that there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. So I would say, consider that people are living now. People have their own dreams as well as to what liberation and hope looks like for them. And do your best to meet people where they are while you're also trying to figure out your own boundaries and truth.
Ah, that's excellent. Well, we're going to wrap up today, and I know that you sent me some songs. I asked you to send me some music from Nigeria, and you were kind enough to send me some songs over. So once we wrap up here, if our audience would stick around, I'm going to treat them to those songs, which I found to be very nice. Were those mean anything specifically to you when I asked you to send those, or just happened to come up with those? Any particular reason why you chose those songs?
Yeah, because they're the songs that are playing a lot in Nigeria right now.
Good. That's even better.
Yeah.
That's even better. So I'm going to play those after we wrap up. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very enlightening. And I asked you just about every question that I had about going to Nigeria. So you have taken care of a lot of the questions that I personally had. So I thank you for sharing that information, sending the documentary to us, and good luck with that. Good luck with the book's already out, right?
Yes.
You want to tell people the name of the book, and if you want to tell us any websites or anything that we can go to follow you or get more information, this is the time to do it.
Sure. So the book is out. You can go to malarkeybooks.com to get the book, or to itorobassey.com to follow me and to get the book. But yeah, it's out in the world.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'll put that down in the description box. And I thank you so much for taking the time. What time is it there anyway?
It's 5:50.
5:50. So it's like 10:50 here. So thank you for taking time to speak with us today, Itoro. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.